Hey everyone, this is Belinda Carr. Welcome back to the Boost AC podcast, where we dive into the world of construction and explore the stories of people and companies who are shaping the future of our industry. We've got yet another exciting podcast for you today. I'm speaking with Brent Wadas, CEO and co-founder of BotBuilt. Thanks for joining us, Brent.
And thank you for having me. It's great to see you, and I hope everyone out there is having a good day today.
Yeah, we've spoken in the past, and I really love your company. I love the approach you're taking, and I cannot wait to dive into the details of what you all are doing. As a brief overview, BotBuilt aims to create robotic systems that take in building plans, digitize it, and then turn your building. You all create exact specs of a particular building, and then you even build the panels and ship it to the site. That's you all are tackling a lot of problems all at once. It's a pretty brilliant effort.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's tackling a lot. I think one of my co-founders, Brent Wadas, he's got his PhD in all these robotic systems. He's very thoughtful and intentional about that. So it might seem like we're taking off a lot, right? But the real issue is especially in robotics for construction, you have to think of a systems-based approach. It just can't be one niche product that does one little thing, because then you're just building a different power tool. And that really doesn't do a lot to move momentum towards a future that will enable labor to do more safely and do more with the limited people that they have left in the actual industry. So for us, we take two-dimensional PDF garbage basic plans, turn them into a 3D model, gives you an entire takeoff for the lumber, the sheathing, right down to the nail and the cost associated with that. And from there, we have a different system that turns that into robotic code, where we use off-the-shelf robots that I literally buy used on eBay, and using custom tooling systems that we've built here in the shop. We turn that into framing packages, ship it to the job site, and you frame a house in a couple hours. It just makes things a lot easier and safer. But we did have to, yes, I'm not missing my hair as a joke. It's a lot of work that our team, but we have an incredibly intelligent and gifted team here that are very mission focused on solving the housing crisis, and that makes for a lot of winners here. So it's a good thing.
It's very inspiring to see all these different companies tackling. We obviously, everyone knows we have an issue. We have a housing shortage, affordable housing shortage issue. But it's very inspiring to see how every company has approached it in a different way.
Yeah.
And there's some really large companies out there, and we've talked about them in the past, that have taken a far more automated approach to construction. Y'all have done the software side of it, more hands-on with a little bit of automation. Y'all have kind of created your own blueprint. What works for you, what works for your company, and what works for the region that y'all are in. When did y'all come up with this idea for BotBuilt?
This was actually something that, again, I'll shout out to Brent Wadas here. He was doing his PhD work. He worked at NASA. He did work at Cornell. He's brilliant and gifted, right? And he's doing his PhD here at Duke. And because he didn't want to just be thinking about robots all the time, he had a young family, he bought a fixer-upper. And he thought, that way on the weekends, I can just come home, decompress, rebuild my home. And he learned a couple of things about home building. One, his home was hot garbage at the time, and it was going to be a lot more work than he thought it was, right? Two, he realized there were a lot of practices in framing especially that were dirty and dangerous and duplicatable, and all these little inklings came in. He's like, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Well, a robot should be doing this. He went back to his bad habits, right? He's like, I got a robot. I need to do this. So what he started thinking about is how he could inculcate robotics into the framing problem in particular. He and I have known each other for years. He's actually married to my cousin. So, I've always known him. My father is very proud of him. He's always been the smarter one, and look at Barrett, he works at NASA. He does robots and rockets and not. It's a great genius guy. And he came to me and he said, okay, I think I have this solved. Let's start thinking about a business plan around that. What's very interesting is from his one little spark of an idea came our realization that framing is a huge part of the labor crisis that we're dealing with here. And it's also something that offsets every other trade. So if your framing is late, delayed by weather, delayed by a labor shortage, suddenly your plumbing and electrical and all these other trades that have to go into that actual structural build, even, the inspection, quite frankly, are now put back weeks. Right now in the interest rate environment that we're in, builders, developers, et cetera, are feeling that pressure acutely when they're sitting on land that they can't turn into someone else's mortgage and someone else's problem, because they're facing these delays. So we kind of stumbled into this huge world of, oh my goodness, framing could be 40% of your cost and time. What can we do to impact that immediately? We had different instincts right off the bat, like what about volumetric modular? What about this? And we realized that, quite frankly, all builders that are building, especially in single family residential, they're building a panel on the job site, holding it up, nailing it to the next panel that they build and moving forward. If we can find a way to automate that, and frankly, panels are nothing new, but putting them with robotic precision is, making them something that does not cause extra work on the job site is.
Yeah.
And our ability to kind of change that and leverage that is what really gave focus to this. Just one other caveat I'll throw out there. In that process, we learned a lot about what the laborers go through. I spent about 10 years in the Army, right? I joined special operations for a reason. I want to be in the most incredible fight with the most incredible people and just get in there. If I died downrange, whoops, like that's part of the gig, right? I raised my right hand. I said, this is what we'll do. My wife gets to marry someone much more attractive maybe, and then she'll have money for insurance. It's going to be great. But the people that are building our homes in America right now are 10 times more likely to die than me and my friends over in Afghanistan. That makes zero sense to me. They did not sign up for that. They just signed up to put bread on the table. And so if we can build a system that makes their jobs safer, to me, that's a huge win beyond the monetary value or the actual intrinsic value of a cool robotics project. That is something that America will need to keep the last laborers that we have alive and encourage more to come into the field, knowing that their life is not 10 times more dangerous than a soldier's in Afghanistan back in the height of the war.
Whew, I didn't know that it was 10 times more dangerous. My gosh. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard of repetitive tasks causing long-term injuries and all that stuff, but you're right, when it comes to like framing on high rises or something, that is far more dangerous,
Yep.
despite all the codes and everything that we have set up. Yeah.
My dad framed houses while he was getting through school and medical school, and he jokes the only reason I'm alive today is because he refused to go up on the top plate and nail in the roof. Like he's just like, nope, it's windy, it's Colorado, no thank you. That's just this big little thing. He's not wrong, statistically speaking.
Yeah.
So it's a real issue.
So that's one of the first problems that you all identified. It's not just automation, but it's the safety issue as well that you all really wanted to address. So
Completely.
Let's walk through the process. Like first, you talked about getting plans because we know the home building industry in the States is still pretty outdated. It's still pretty old school. People don't even model in 3D. We don't do any sort of coordination, clash detection. Nothing like that is going on in the residential sector. So you all primarily get plans in PDF format.
Correct. Just your typical overview of the plan. Here it is. Hope for the best. Maybe it's the scale. Fingers crossed. And we'll go from there.
And figure out the scale yourself most of the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you all have developed a proprietary software to turn those plans into 3D models and then code.
Yes, it does two things that are crucial, I think, for the builder to see. The first is that 3D model that shows them like, oh, this is what your framed house would look like. And they can see that and verify and QA it there. The second thing it does is it creates, and forgive us, we're largely engineers, so our marketing department needs some work. We've built a book of panels that we call the, wait for it, panel book that is, very easy to access. And it gives the builders like, oh yeah, that's my window schedule. They can go panel by panel and understand that. And on the first page of that whole thing is the overview of that same house, but with the panels numbered and marked. 1 connects to 2, 2 connects to 3. And on the last page is a list of materials and cuts used for this build. So the builder knows exactly what they're getting well ahead of time. So we know how to inventory lumber and we know how to actually allocate lumber and nail usage based on what that home needs are. So for us, that's very huge. Then the next step in that process is where it kind of bridges that gap. It takes it to our off-the-shelf. You see these robots on typical automotive lines with very custom tools that we've patented over the time. And these are the things that are putting together those panel packs. They're the ones putting together the lumber. They're able to, using computer vision, pick from a lumber bunk, cull it, place it in the saw, cut it down to what it needs to be, place on the table, attach it, build it out with printing already on it, and bring it over to the pallet truck to be loaded up and sent to the job site. So it's an oversimplification of an IKEA home. It's a lot of technology and algorithms going on beneath the surface there, but that's the easiest way to look at it.
Are you all making just exterior wall panels, or are you also building interior wall panels, floors, and roofs?
Right now, we're just building exterior and interior panels. So we use sheeting on the outside for the exteriors. We'll do obviously the pressure treated wood on the bottom. We're starting to work on a roof-based system. We found a lot of antiquated technology and truss technology to where it's still very intensive on the human side. It's very, you always need a heavy on the job site. It's very dangerous work, even in factories with automated systems. So we're changing that a little bit. That's more to follow. I'm not going to get in trouble with my patent attorneys right now, but that's a cool little system we've worked out there. And then floor systems will be on that same system. But right now it's been mainly wall panels. It's been a great success.
So how automated is the construction of the panels themselves? You talked about buying robot arms off eBay that have been used in other industries before and retrofitting them. But how much manual labor is involved in it? Or is it completely automated, shut off, and then they're just people controlling the robots?
That's a great question. That's where I get kind of fun and specific here. So we believe in a couple of watchwords here. One is flexibility, so the ability to take in any plan and turn it into robotic code. And the other thing is when we talk about automation, we mean automation. We want everything to be left to the robot devices themselves. That's what we use the computer vision system for. That's what we actually use our software systems to do, is so that a human oversees multiple teams of robots. They hit enter, make sure the robots are doing what they should be doing. But we do not want to have humans interfering with that work, because we want to take the labor side and basically for the humans that are doing the labor, to let them do higher order and safer tasks rather than that dangerous work. So our robotic systems are off the shelf. We get them from car manufacturers. Once they're out of 0.2 millimeters of precision, the BMW plant there in Spartanburg, South Carolina, those robots are dead to them. So they've spent a couple $100,000 on robots, and they'll put on eBay for 10 to 30 grand. And we can just go ahead and scoop those up, because 0.3 mils of precision in my world is just fine and dandy. And so for us, it's the ability to let the robots do that. And we have a different system, a proprietary system, that lets the robots plan out their path, and actually through that planning, create the motions that will create the most efficient build process. And they can build those panels without humans having to sit and reprogram, because that's where a lot of companies that get into automated systems waste a ton of their money. They're doing it by reprogramming lines every time a different plan comes through and every time a change order comes through. And for your viewers that are very, very familiar with change orders, that's some scar tissue, right? And it's going to happen. You have to plan for that ahead of time. What we've done is allowed the robots to be able to shift on the fly. Builder comes back and says, hey, the customer actually wants this and this, and it's panel 28 and 31. Cool. We just put those new plans in. Robot's going to pump out 28 and 31, just the way that the customer now requests it. Maybe the window's shifted over. Maybe a door is where there wasn't one before. That's okay. We don't have to sit there and reprogram and hand jam lines that can take hundreds of thousands of dollars in human capital to do. And we have systems that can be automated on that side as well.
So when you had to acquire talent to build this company, you've obviously approached it very different than a panel company that builds all these panels by hand. There's a lot of upfront work. Building the software was probably a huge effort on your part. And then even thinking through this process of like switching out panels in the future, everything, that's all more code-based. It's more software-based. And then you talked about reprogramming the robot arms and building all these custom tools and everything for it. It's not typical construction. Where did you find the talent you needed to build this line?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was a lot of working through various academic and work channels that we've built up through our various careers over time, right? So Barrett teaching over at Duke, Colin, my other co-founder, having huge networks, both in construction, software development, just all these lines of people that are out there. There are very talented individuals that work on these crazy wazoo projects right now. And what I've noticed, especially with the younger generation, so those that are more my daughter's age, the 20-somethings that are starting to get after it. What's interesting is they want a mission and a purpose. And sometimes when you meet them, they're like, wow, I have invented this amazing 28 lines of code for Microsoft. I hope that the stock goes up another 20 bips and I make a bonus. Like there's so emotional connection there.
Yeah.
When we come in and talk to them and say, hey, you're brilliant at writing code, or hey, you are a software engineer that happens to understand mechanical engineering or electrical engineering. Have you ever thought about ending homelessness? Have you ever thought about the market factors that go into ending homelessness? Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to lower the cost of housing so that every American have at home. And we're able to make factors available so that we can provide more housing to those who cannot do it themselves. And when, especially the kids hear this, and I say kids loosely, I realize, I'm sorry, 20-somethings, but I'm old and bald now. This is my life. But when they hear that, they connect
You've earned the
with
right
that
to call
the same
them
way I
kids
do.
now.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, yeah, my kids called my Muslims, but yeah, it's something that's very interesting to me that they latch onto that. So we're able to, it took a little time, a little belief, and robots are hard to work on. It is not an easy task. It can be a little daunting and scary. But when we find the right mix of people, and just as we worked very hard to understand the culture of construction and its specific market needs and meet them where they're at, not just say like, hi, I'm from tech, I'm here to help and save you from yourself, and say, hey, what are your problems? What would actually solve things for you? We do the same thing with the tech side. Say, hey, yeah, it's hard, it's difficult. It's a lot of pressure to try and get these things to work properly, but we believe that you can do it. And we find those that have that right balance of grit and, passion. Today we have a young intern. She's from Waterloo University, and she's been working on some fiducial markings on some of our lumber. And she cracked this code that was like, oh my gosh, I would expect one of my senior engineers to do this. You're a gosh darn intern, and you just did that. Watching her face light up at our stand-up today, when you just say, great work. And she's like, yeah, she's connecting to that emotionally. And it is beautiful to see. It's like a goosebump moment where like this future generation of software and computer engineer who's working on very hard tech and very mechanical issues is getting it. She's going to be, whether she's at BotBuilt or whether she's just solving some other Wazoo problem, I know she's going to be great, right? She's connected to the problem. The more that we can pull those folks in, and now we're starting to assemble a team that I treat very much like a team on a very elite force in the DoD. We're looking for the right personality, the right level of intelligence, the right level of grit. And at the end of the day, I want some competitiveness.
Yeah.
You know, she's a very nice person, but I know at the end of the day, she's looking at her fellow interns going, I'm better than you. And I love that. I just love that. So it's a good thing.
Need go-getters like that in a company
Absolutely.
like yours. You can't have
Absolutely.
complacent people. Absolutely not. So you mentioned something that I really appreciate. You talked about catering these robots, catering your solutions to the construction industry by understanding its needs. What does the construction industry need? What do people living in the homes need? What are builders looking for? I find it disheartening when people come from tech or something with this grandiose visions of, I've solved problems in tech. Construction is nothing compared to those problems, or in automation, in the automobile industry too. Like, it's easy to put the construction industry down and underestimate how difficult and complex the problems are. So I love that you talked about that, and it seems like your whole team has embodied that idea too.
Yes, I think the last thing the construction industry needs is a lecture from people that haven't solved anything in construction. Like I said, call me old-fashioned, but like, holy cow, guy, we've been building for a good 10,000 years. We're still going to build for another 10,000 years. Like, maybe give them some credit.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've built financial incentives around the silos of data that we have that we all see as problematic, well, there's reasons for that. The way that banks structure loans for multifamily projects is one way. The way that banks structure loans for a different type of single-family residential project is a different way. You, at a certain point, can't just have this open channel of communication, everyone get on Slack and solve everything together. That's not the way the world works. And so when you first understand, hey, what is your actual need? The one resounding thing that we heard was, oh, holy crap, I have no one to work on the job site for the next 4 weeks. Okay, what's the most crucial part of that? And just start necking that down and not tell them like, oh, well, we can solve that. Say, oh, that seems like a really hard problem. Let us digest that a little bit. Let us do some market research. Let us actually dive into what could be solvable there. That's why we're attacking framing first. It's something that everyone has to deal with. It's something that gets inspected. It's pretty vital to the roof not caving in on you. So it's pretty important as far as getting it right the first time. And there's an element of, okay, if that's kind of the worst of it from a labor perspective, if we can start there and iterate from that, we can move forward. And finally, what I'll say is we're working on an iterative process with builders. So when we go to builders and talk to them, we understand their problem set, and they understand that we're not some panacea that's going to work, for 6,000 times instantly. It's going to be a process of them giving us data to learn from. And once they've got that institutional buy-in, that we're not here to lecture them on what they're doing, we're just here to help in any way, shape, or form. We're not the cavalry. We're not, some white horse hero. We're just literally here to say, hey, how can we be of assistance to you? Exactly. And it's great.
Yeah. And you said the construction industry is so siloed, but what you're doing is not siloed because it touches every other trade. It touches the foundation guys that come in, the concrete guys. The electricians and the plumbers that come in after you, the insulation people, all of them their work needs to be integrated into your panels. So how do you bring those people in? Do you make, for break down this problem to the very, very simplistic form, like the cutouts that are made in studs? We have seen big, huge gouges to the point where steel studs are no longer serving their purpose. How do you avoid things like that? Or do you all try to say that you can't control every problem, you all are building the panels themselves, transporting them to the site exposed, and then the plumbers and the electricians do what they need to do after?
Yeah, that's a great point. So right now, what you just said is what we do. And our builders understand you're getting panels. And that's as far as that goes. Beneath the surface, so to speak, you open the hood up, we're thinking very deeply about how we can start doing the routing for electrical and plumbing ahead of time. And that does require some coordination, right? When a builder just sends us the PDF plan, hey, where's the electricity going? I don't know. You left to ask the electrician. I haven't hired one yet. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Guess and check. Got it. Because not everyone's using some 3D modeling system where everyone's collaborating together and all these other dream scenarios that everyone at IBS next week is going to talk about, right? They're going to tell us, oh, well, if they would just use our equipment, it solves it. And some CTO is going to get tasked with, hey, implement this software I just bought for $1 billion. It's going to fail, right? But for us, we're thinking about those processes to make them easier. So we can start saying, okay, when you do work with an electrician, what typically are those routes? Right now, we think about that stuff in terms of, okay, this wall we know is a water wall. This is a water pocket, a closet here that's going to be required. we know where not to put studs. We know where someone with a Sawzall is going to make you fail inspection right quick, right? Because he's just like, I'm just paid to put the line in, buddy. Sorry,
Exactly.
don't care. And so for us, just thinking through those next steps, and what we're working on currently is a system that will iterate towards having those systems done. Grand vision, do I want to see absolute plumbed electrical plug and play walls with insulation ready to roll? Absolutely. Is that available now from BotBuilt? Absolutely not. And just having that clarity with the builders, they don't come in expecting like, oh, so I just, it's everything. No, it's a process, but
Yeah.
we're willing to work on the problem as it exists. And like I'm a big hockey guy. So you skate to where the puck is going, not to where you currently are. You don't sit right. You think through where it's going. That's constant communication with builders, and that's important.
I love that realistic approach. And that's probably, do you think that's one of the reasons why y'all are still cost competitive in a market as cutthroat as the residential sector?
Uh, I think there's a couple of factors. That's definitely the largest. I think buying used robots is a big thing for me. I call me old fashioned, but if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. So like that's kind of my mantra. And in building, the
Huh,
bottom
doesn't
line is
make
the bottom
sense.
line. Yeah, yeah. It's just a reality that we exist in that I I would love to be working on next stage
Yeah.
technology that will change the world in a vacuum where it gives infinite money, but that's not reality. I'm not running a lab. This isn't a DARPA project. This isn't some government funded NSF grant. This is a business. And so we have to understand what the realities of the actual business are and that we're matching their dollars for actual value, not just saying, well, because it's tech, you should pay more. That makes zero sense to me. And that's where I think we've seen the trail of automation construction companies fail and die over the last couple of years is they just came in assuming that everyone will pay Porsche
Exactly.
prices for a Yugo, and that's not the way the real world works.
So let's talk about prices since we've gone down this path. How do your panels compare to traditional framing on site?
Yeah, right now we're very competitive cost wise, except you're still paying framers to put the panels together. So we're a little bit more expensive. What we found is most builders are paying for the actual premium on getting panels for a couple of reasons. One, more builders are starting to understand that hemorrhage of money that takes place during their build cycle. They're like, well, it's just this much in labor per square foot, right? And it's just this much in lumber. So why is it now actually this cost at the end of the day when I'm looking at my numbers? Well, it's those 17 trips back to the lumber yard or Home Depot. It's that wasted material because some guy was like, oh, I need 2/8. I'll just cut through that 16, not thinking, oh, that was the joist piece that I needed for over there, right? It's all that wasted material that goes into that. And they're willing to take that bet. Now, with interest rates so high on that land, builders are willing to pay 20 to 40% on premium on panels because they're not paying for the extra 6 weeks of framing and correction time when they're getting a house framed in a couple of hours on that same day and able to set up all of their trays in the process. Over time, however, and this is where I'll caveat this, yeah, there's a premium on panels. Our robots are, it's taken a lot of money and time to build up this system that can do these things. I do expect as this becomes a more normalized process, prices to come steeply down. Because over time, more builders and more framers will adapt to that system where a framer can think I can do 2 to 3 houses a day. We'll reset the labor pricing. Framers can make more money in a safer environment. And builders will be able to actually save money because they know their costs ahead of time. I know every cut ahead of time. And my robots are just not that expensive to run once the system's up and going.
Yeah.
So for me, I do see a downplay in cost that our vision is to pass on to the consumer because I do greatly concerned about my daughter's generation at all not being able to buy homes and create that generational wealth that my generation, the generation before me, were able to do, that is so crucial for not only their retirement, but just their financial health and well-being over time, being able to live in a place that can happen to work as your retirement fund while it's operating.
That's true. Okay, I have two questions for you. The
Yeah, please.
first is when we talk about cost, are we talking about one specific region in the US? And the reason I say that is because I toured an automation factory, an automated modular, well, let me say that again, a volumetric factory in Idaho last year.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
only place it made sense to ship to was California
Okay.
because it was so expensive to build those modules. They couldn't accept projects anywhere else in the States. So when you're talking about panels, are you talking about the Northeast? Are you talking about California? Or is it just a little pretty cost competitive anywhere in the States?
It's pretty cost competitive anywhere in the States. In fact, we foresee, because my robots are running at under $2 an hour basically on electricity, and because they're creating their own lines, I don't have to pay someone to reprogram them every time they're doing a plan design change. That's a huge cost savings over time. We wanted to be intentional about across the United States. I always throw out California as the caveat because that's just its own animal, right? I've had friends that have businesses in California that are in the construction tech space, and I'm like, well, if I can solve for California, I can solve for the rest of the world. What I found is if you're solving for a place for like $800 a square foot sounds like a good deal, you might actually not be solving the whole problem, because I'm thinking,
Yeah,
you're in Durham, North Carolina, $200 a square foot. Wait, Rockefeller?
exactly.
Like, it's insane. So we need to be thinking through what the actual market is. I'm not here to solve the richest of the rich. I'm not here to solve for people that can't pay the money. We're here to solve a construction labor crisis. And that means we have to meet prices for the entire marketplace. I think in the Northeast, you'll see higher prices. That's fine, but we can still do it at the same rate because it's the same bots. They haven't had any labor disputes with me so far. So far the cost has been okay. It seemed
Yeah.
pretty compliant.
Well, my second question is about the robots themselves. I've spoken to a couple of people that say robot arms are not really compatible to are not great for repetitive work when it comes to assembling wall panels and stuff. Have you noticed that?
I would say 10 years ago, they were probably dead on. Over the last 10 years, however, what we found is technology has changed rapidly, and the ability to incorporate a computer vision system, the ability to incorporate different types of thinking. And quite frankly, two of the papers that Barrett has written explain in detail that if your listeners really want to learn or fall asleep, they are welcome to study in depth. Because for us, in our perspective, those robot arms are capable of so much more than we've given them. And now the technology is available from the software side to program them in a way that lets them live up to their potential. I know I'm kind of humanizing them a bit, but it's untapped
Well,
potential. Is
they're your
something that's been told
employees, so one of your
yes,
cheapest employees at $2 an hour.
yeah, exactly. And we do name them, and it's become a bit of an old Yeller situation if we ever have to get rid of one. But they're things that we have created that we thought would do something like put lug nuts on in a Ford factory. Sure. But they are also capable of realigning a bent boat or warped piece of lumber right to a 90, putting it to the top or bottom plate, and make sure that it's sturdy with 3 nails exactly compressed to the right degree for that type of lumber, for that type of humidity. All of that data cycles through our system in seconds. And our ability to do that means that robot arm that was a dumb, hard automation robot arm that does the same thing over and over again can now have a life of freedom where it's saying, hey, which panel do you need me to build now? Cool. On it, boss. Go.
So y'all don't need any specialized engineered lumber, LVLs and all that. Y'all just use standard.
We use stud grade lumber over here. Just cheap literally the garbage that's in there right now, I got at Lowe's on sale because they wanted to get rid of it because it was too bent and bowed. So they gave me like $2,000 worth of lumber for like $140 I just trucked over here, right? It's garbage stuff, but that's what the market does on the job site, right? They don't complain when it's left in the mud puddle and it's bent and bowed. You work with it. You pull it in, you put it down, you nail it in, and then you hope, it stays, and good. It works. So many of the systems when we started this business, where we call and say, hey, maybe we just buy a system from XYZ company. We just buy it, bring it over, see what we can do to manipulate it a little bit, and make it better. What I found was they said, oh, well, you need to use number 1 grade or LVLs, or you need to use some type of engineered or worse, imported Scottish pine. And I remember talking to these salespeople like, how does this make me money? Like, at what point? Like, I'm not building in California. Let's say I'm in Kansas. I'm going to have a tough time in Manhattan, Kansas, convincing someone, hey, I know this home is now $900 a square foot, but it was built by robots. You want it? Like, no, you get laughed out of that state. So it's an issue. Definitely an issue.
So what sort of homes are you all building right now? Are you building just standard suburban homes? Are you more on high-end custom homes?
That's a good question. We've built kind of all types. We're a learn by doing type. So all of our customer bases have been built on this mutual understanding and trust that I want to learn from you if you're willing to learn from us and give us all the data that we need to improve and better your situation. So that means we've built everything from, custom homes to more traditional, what I'll call ranch tract style, that, semi-custom. It's you chose your kitchen type. So that's a difference, I guess, the type of home. We just finished our first ADU because that's a thing now. So we've tried to work through and cycle through all these different types. We built a few custom homes that are gigantic out in Pinehurst, North Carolina on a lake, multi-million-dollar type of establishment homes. And we've built homes that are your basic 3-2 ranch that looks very beautiful and quaint. And we'll just go to some young family as their starter homes. It's been good to have that variety in.
Is that contradictory to the idea of automation? Because I know you'll have a book on panel sizes, but the types of homes that you have, if they are so varied, does that affect the panel sizes themselves?
Well, the answer is yes, but as far as the word contrary to automation, it is in the traditional sense. I mean, obviously, if we could just build the same home over and over again, like a volumetric company, right? We're just pumping out the same 20-foot, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's not what home building is, though. For most builders, every home is a snowflake. Even the most basic of home builder now will give options to even their starter home packages, which means you have to be able to adapt to those plans. And the one crucial element that I think really differentiated our plan from most that we've seen before is we went into it knowing full well, we want your change orders. We want you to feel like you can send us any plan at any time. And we just pump thousands of plans through our software system so that we can be having these robots learn what is out there in the world, what they might be having to build, so that we're not constrained to say, the old Henry Ford adage, you can have any color as long as it's black. That's adorable in a world that's still wowed by the Model T, but that's not us, right? Even our tract home communities demand differentiation. We demand artistic value and intrinsic value to our architecture. And that requires us to step our game up from the software and hardware side to make our robots adapt to a world that requires artistic change.
So in this you're talking about adapting and learning and all that stuff. Is there one particular project that comes to mind where y'all had, it was particularly challenging for y'all and it took y'all in a different direction, or there was a hurdle that you overcame that taught y'all lessons that you didn't anticipate?
Boy, yeah, I think there's one that stands out in particular. One, it was our first time. We started out with FANUC robots, and we bought some used ABB robots that were well-used ABB robots. And we ran into some issues right off the bat, and that they kept on slipping on the cement floor that we had at our newer factory. And it turns out that we just needed to epoxy the bolts in because the cement floor was old and it wasn't working as well as possible. We learned that fact right off the bat. The second thing that we learned was we were given a custom home to build that was very large, very custom, had a lot of unique types of wall sets. And we wanted these robots to work through that process and learn from that. In that process, we learned A, these robots were a lot more capable than we thought. B, the systems that we use, and not just learning, but also on the vision side of the house, really have adapted well to where we can be using these entirely different set of brands, different set of hardware, different set of basic controller box, talking to our software system in depth without any issue and working through that, and then watching that home go up in a way that was just magnificent. It's a beautiful home. It's a gorgeous home on a lake. Wonderful, right? Watching all those things come together, you realize that there's so much hard work by the individuals here on the engineering side of the house that pays off in a way that, which is an odd thing to say, the consumer will never know.
Yeah.
They will never know the difference between a robot built home. They won't know how easy it was for those panels to slide together on the job site because of that robotic precision. They won't know all the effort that went into adopting a software site that's not siloed to one brand. So we're not dependent on one distributor. We can buy our robots from anywhere on eBay and any brand. That type of hard solution that has taken a couple of years to really work through and develop is what we want to have on the back end. But what I want for the consumer to go and just say, wow, it's really well built home. Thanks. It seems a little ungrateful, but that's how we want to operate, just as a better tool for the market to use to improve the lives of those who build the homes that build America.
You said you all have named the robots. Have you named this software solution? I'm thinking of when you describe it, it's like Jarvis in Iron Man. It's a Friday in the later movies.
We have not thought that through yet as far as naming the software set. We might want to avoid anything that involves an AI that could come over and take over the world. So Skynet and Jarvis might be out. But I will think about that. I love that idea. Our first two robots are Axel and Slash. It's kind of an homage to Guns N' Roses, one of my favorite old bands. And one of them came with a little bit of a paint slash in him, so he got Slash on him. It's just the way it goes. But yeah, it's just something fun, and it makes it easier too, other than us say like Robot 23A on the left. Like, no, just give them names. They're fun. They have personalities. They can act up. It makes it easier to yell at something when there's a bug in the system, and gives you some type of personality to have there.
How has BotBuilt been embraced or received by the construction industry? Like, have you, because y'all have such a grounded, realistic approach to this, and y'all are coming in without this high and mighty attitude. You're like, hey, we want to help you. What can we do to help? How can we work together? Have you felt that it's been far more welcoming than you thought it would be?
Very much so. I think that having the bigs in the industry all moving towards panelized construction in general and just saying we just need more factories, that's all we want, that's been helpful to us from a sales perspective. But I definitely think our realistic approach, as you put it, but that humility of just saying, hey, we're not going to solve it all in one day. Tell us what problems 1 through 3 are. Let's focus on one right now and go. That's been endearing for a lot of builders. And also, there's scar tissue out there. There are developers and magnates of this industry that have been burned by people who oversold or overpromised and way underdelivered, or in some cases, in my opinion, committed securities fraud or lied, right, by not disclosing what it was actually available. I think that as we grow and progress as an industry, and I'm talking about construction and automation together, I think that the more that we can have honest and good conversations and let our, as one VC told me once, I had an honesty bias that could affect me with investors. Like, sorry, bro, that's integrity where I come from, and I'm not about to commit securities fraud by selling you some crap that doesn't exist. The more that we can just be honest, the more we're going to get to a root truth that will create a solution that will last for generations so that we can continue to build up and not just, continue to endanger lives or continue to raise costs or continue to do XYZ problem that we all talk about, but no one actually seems to have a solution for. The better we can get to that ground truth, I think the better off we're all going to be. And just that comes with just an honest conversation. There have been plenty of times I said, nope, I can't do that yet. And are they disappointed? You betcha. But they're not going to walk away thinking I'm a liar. And that's important.
It's always fun talking to you, Brent.
Appreciate that.
So what are the future plans for BotBuilt? Like, how many factories do you have right now? And do you have plans to start up some new factories in some other places, in some other states?
Yes, we have 3 sites right now, all of which are in Durham, North Carolina. So we have this illustrious factory. As you can tell, I'm big on luxury and items such as my nails in the wall to hang my extra shirts. We have the factory here. Basically, it's like an R&D lab. We have one down the street that we call the staging facility. That's where we can take what we learned in R&D and replicate it hundreds, if not thousands of times, so we can make sure the tool wear and all the things that you think about there. We just got our 3rd site here that will actually be a production facility. And so that's when we can start ramping up for all the orders that we've had. And so next, the way we think about it is where the market is hot and where the labor shortage is most acute. And those areas are such as over 2024, late into 2025, 26. You're going to see things such as Northwest Arkansas, which has had a huge amount of growth and not a lot of labor there. Florida, which I think last year accounted for 1,000 people moving there a day, basically, as it worked out in the aggregate, which is insane to think about, but a reality that they're facing. Texas has obviously seen great growth. And then the usual suspects, your Phoenix, your Salt Lakes, your Boulders, where these, Denver has exploded, Phoenix has exploded, Salt Lake has exploded. But it's not like there's been this big migration of labor into that marketplace as well. And where it's extremely hot and windy and cold, all those places make it, dangerous to build in. That's where we want to be in over the next couple of years to make sure that we're fulfilling that market need.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing your story and telling me explaining how your company works. And I do want to ask you one last question. And this is a question I ask all my interviewees. What advice would you have for a young professional coming into the construction industry that wants to do something different? Like the lady that you talked about in the beginning of the podcast, someone coming in maybe from a robotic side or from the automobile sector that wants to change construction. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, this is something that's pretty constant in my life. When I first went into the Army, right, I got to do some amazing things. I'm not going to complain one bit. Sometimes people talk about their Army life and like, what Army were you in? It was an awesome time. I had a blast. But going through basic training, right, you're going to clean some toilets. You're going to mop some floors. You're going to do some tasks that you might think are beneath you or menial. And one thing that my early on drill sergeants taught me was, Brent, if your job is to mop the floor, you mop the floor the darn well best you have ever mopped. So when someone sees that you work hard no matter what that is. And I think that comes down to culture. Understanding the culture of the Army is that every person is going to have a tough job at one point in their career, handle it with dignity and class. So just understanding that cultural fit. The second thing is you need to stay humble about it, right? If nothing is beneath you, your ceiling is uncapped. That means you can go anywhere. That means if you're willing to start at the bottom and work your way up, you're going to be golden. And then whatever you do it to the best of your ability. Even if it's an easy, menial, trivial task. I mean, literally, she was just running a board through, and this is the end result, is a board with 4 printing spots on it, all in the same spot that was run through multiple times, that printed all in the same spot. So someone looking, and you're like, what'd you do today? And she'd be like, oh, I made these 4 dots on a board. Like, what? But the work she did behind that is immense. And so when you are willing to just put the effort in, understand the culture in your operating, and then just do your best, I think that anything is possible in automation and construction. I hope the rising generation comes and joins us because no one company is solving the problems that are at hand. And we need more people in the fight. Welcome to the pond.
That was excellent advice. Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, like I said, it's always fun speaking with you. It's inspiring and it motivates me to continue what I'm doing and solve the next problem that I haven't solved. And
well, we appreciate what you do in giving a voice to all the companies that are out there trying to do something forward and make progress in the industry that will always be here. So we'll always need construction. So let's just try and make it better.
Yeah. Thanks again, Brent. I hope to have you back on the podcast sometime soon.
Thank you so much. Anytime.